Well, we love having in different guests from different walks of life in Kansas City for our Feature Friday half-hour sit-down. And today, we've got on Joel Goldberg. His new book is out, Small Ball, Big Dreams. Of course, Royals broadcaster now set to begin his 18th season. Is that right? 18 years. How long does it feel like it's been?
That's a good question. I mean, I could somewhat vividly, I don't know if you could somewhat vividly do anything. I could remember when I got here.
Okay.
But, you know, my kids were 2 and 5 at the time. They're now both in college. You know, Kansas City is now a place I've lived in well beyond anywhere else I've lived in. This is home. Mm-hmm. So in many ways it feels like, you know, a lifetime ago because it was. But then again, I guess I think when you start to look back at who the players were in that first lineup and, you know, David DeJesus and Jose Guillen and John Buck and Billy Butler and Tony Pena Jr., it's like, man, that really was a long time ago. I mean, 18 years is ridiculous to me. I'm really proud of that.
No, it's amazing. I mean, listen, we were talking about it just off the air briefly. It's a very transient business. Guys come, go, they're in, they're out. You move all over the country. To maintain it for 2 decades, especially in, you know, a lot of people sometimes try to use this market as a stepping stone market, and you haven't done that. It became home for you, like you said, despite growing up in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because growing up, I wanted to get to Philadelphia or Chicago, which is where we moved when I was 13, and so those were the 2 homes, and so the goal was to get to those markets. And I think that anyone, certainly in our industry, gets this. Nowadays, this is true in all industries with how transient everybody is. That's the nature of it. But I think in the broadcast world, we're always looking at what the next step in the next job is. So again, that might be the case in all professions, but because typically you can't move up the ranks in one place. Yeah. You do your time in, for me, in, you know, small markets and then a little bit bigger markets and then bigger and so you're kind of chasing that dream, I guess, the whole time. And it was so relieving. I didn't know this was going to happen. It was so, and I don't know when it happened, but it was so relieving, or just a different perspective when I hit a point here in Kansas City. Again, I don't know if it was 2010, 11, 9, 12, I don't know, where I said, this is the spot. Like this, there came a point early on when I was here where I just stopped looking. Mm-hmm. And that's a very peaceful place to be. I didn't know it would lead to 17, 18 years. But it was nice to finally just get to love what you're doing and enjoy it and not be chasing something where you were at was an ends to the means or to the next place.
And that is so true, because you're right. It's probably true in other businesses, but I think it's especially true in broadcasting, where you kind of look to where that next move is going to be. And when you finally find that piece and you say, you know what, this is it, it just kind of changes your perspective on your day-to-day, right? And that happened for you, it sounds like.
Yeah, because I think that in chasing the next thing, you're working for that next thing.
Yes.
Which means that in many ways you're working for yourself. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean to make that a speech about, you know, don't be selfish. I mean, like, we all need to be a little bit selfish. But, like, if I go back to early in my career, I felt like I was always trying to be perfect and to get everything right, because in our world, you want the perfect resume tape. Or now I think they call it a reel because tape doesn't exist, right? So, well, they still call us the press sometimes. There is no printing press. So, but, you know, I felt myself always working for the perfect resume tape, the perfect story, the perfect on-camera appearance. And it's nice when you could just go and do your thing and not worry about it. And the more you do your thing, and people say, do you get nervous? And I say, no. Do you get nervous when you go to your job? Or are you worried about saying the wrong thing? You know, people can get fired nowadays. I'm like, no, I think I know what I'm doing, and I'm going to make mistakes every single day, but I know what mistakes are going to get me fired and what mistakes are just going to be ones that are annoying. And what happens over time is that those look, it's live TV, you know, it's live radio. Yeah. You're not going to be perfect, and if you're trying to be perfect, like, that's just a tough way to live. And so you just come to learn that the simple mistakes, they happen every single day. They're like paper cuts at most, and you move on. And that's the stuff that paralyzed me early on.
And here's the thing, though. You're a better broadcaster when you break down those guardrails.
It's more real.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You're a real human being who's going to make mistakes on live TV like I do on live radio. and it's actually more relatable than trying to be the perfect stiff broadcaster in TV or radio.
That's right. And I've always felt like, and look, I'll be the first to say, and there's some days I don't like me either, but I may be for some and not for others. That's our business, right? I mean, we learned hopefully early on that you're just never going to please everyone. So you got to be true to yourself. And I know that sounds a little woo-woo, but I think that's the best way to live. And I think, too, that in a place like Kansas City, in a transient world, but in a place like Kansas City where it's a big enough place and a great place and you could comfortably live here and all of that even if people come here thinking it's going to be transient, I didn't necessarily do that, by the way. I mean, my wife grew up here. She moved away when she was 11. Her sister was living here at the time, still does. So this wasn't a foreign place to us. Mm-hmm. But I can't tell you that I came here saying this was the ultimate destination. I came here hoping that we would love it and knowing that there's a good chance we would based on, the time we'd come in here for the birth of my niece who's now getting married. I mean, all this stuff. I mean, that's how long it's been. And so I think that the hope was, maybe this could be it, but I didn't know. But I think that a lot of us do come here. There are a lot of people in our industry that did not grow up here.
Yes.
That fall in love with it and say, you know what, this is where I want to stay. And part of it is that I think you can be yourself. Mm-hmm. Maybe this is just in my head, but I feel like you get to the big markets and you have to be a certain thing in front of the camera. You have to be a certain thing behind the microphone. And here, I think when people start to realize that you're just their neighbor, which in some ways, like you're probably just their neighbor in New York and Chicago too, although it's a lot bigger and you may never see them, right? People are going to see us in the grocery stores. They're going to see us on the soccer fields for the kids or whatever it is. And I think that makes this a really easy and warm place to live. And I think that when you act like everybody else, if you are like everybody else, it becomes a very comfortable and inviting place. And so I think it all, at least for my personality and who I am, it meshed really well together. Mm-hmm. And when people say, oh, you seem like a real guy or you seem authentic, I'm like, well, we all should be that. And I know it's not that simple in our industry because our industry is one of performance.
Yeah, you're right. That's so well said. Joel Goldberg is here on KCMO Talk Radio, of course, going into his 18th year as a Royals broadcaster. So your book, Small Ball, Big Dreams, the forward is by George Brett. Is there a tie-in to everything we just talked about? And career stuff and what's next into this book and what you try to tie together in this book?
Yeah, quite a bit. And I'll give you the background of how I ended up writing now 2 books because that was certainly never that was never part of the plan.
Yeah.
But the unanswered question when I moved here from a salaried job in St. Louis, same job, but there were 3 of us sharing what I do here now. And so this was the big step for me. Was that I was going to work 6 months a year, no more salary. So I'm an independent contractor, which means I had the other 6 months to do whatever I wanted. And I never figured out that answer. A random game here, I might do some Mavericks hockey, some UMKC basketball, just a bunch of things that were fun. But I never really found that consistent thing. And then I stumbled upon a speaking career, motivational speaker. I never thought I'd do such a thing. I mean, I'd go speak to Rotary clubs and schools and things like that for free and still do. And I fell in love with it and realized that I could run this business. Well, I then started a podcast. I then wrote a book on the first one. And I ask all the guests on my podcast, still to this day, 3 baseball-themed questions. And I don't really talk a lot of baseball. I mean, I want leadership. I want entrepreneurs. I want interesting stories. And so I'll ask them, what's the biggest home run you've hit in your career? I started by saying, what's the biggest home run you've hit? And everybody said marrying their spouse. And I'm like, that's beautiful. That's sweet. But we're having the same recurring storyline here. So let's just say professionally. And, no offense and all that. The second one was, what's the biggest swing and miss you've taken and what did you learn from it? So learned a lot from those answers. Mm-hmm. And the third, because we knew with the Royals, they won the World Series in 2015 playing small ball.
Yeah.
Right. Doing the little things. So I said, what's small ball to you? What are the little things? And that led to the first book, Small Ball, Big Results, which was all the little things that can make you successful, building trust, paying attention to detail. Every role matters, on and on. And then I thought, okay, the sequel to that, I'd like to write Small Ball, Big Dreams because I have such a unique access to people. Like even these high-level CEOs, the entrepreneur you've never heard of, the athlete, well, we know the Bobby Witt Juniors, we know the Salvador Perez's, but do we know the 26th guy on the roster? That was kind of like the entrepreneur to me, and I saw all these tie-ins, And the common theme to all of it is that they're all living these dreams. And none of them followed a straight line. And so this book is full of, whether it's Lorenzo Cain in chapter 1, all these guys talked about, this is what I dreamed. I mean, I interviewed them after their first game, and this is what I dreamed of in the backyard. That wasn't the case for Lorenzo Cain, because he didn't start playing organized baseball till his sophomore year in high school. His mom didn't want him to play football because she didn't think it was safe. He got cut from the basketball team. He had nothing to do and ended up being the last man on the JV that they were going to cancel. This was down by the Florida-Georgia line down in Florida. They were going to cancel the season because they didn't have enough players. Lorenzo Cain saved his high school's JV team and went on to be a world champion in baseball and have this spectacular career. The book is bookended by the final chapter, Freddie Fermin. So I've got Royals chapters on both, and not a lot of Royals chapters. Freddie Fermin is Salvador Perez's backup, and the very short of it is in 2015 at 19 years old, which is well past the age that a Venezuelan would be discovered. It's too late at that point, that he was basically roaming the streets of the Dominican looking for a job, and nobody was interested in him. His brother had a job with the Mets, his younger brother, tried to get him in there. They said he's too small, too old, not going to work. The Royals, as a favor, put him up at their place, let him sleep there at their Dominican academy, and let him work out with the team until he found his way back to Venezuela. They looked at him and said, we might have too many catchers, but this guy's better than the rest. Now he's Salvador Perez's backup. And then everything in between, a lot of non-baseball stories, inspirational stories. It's a book of grit and resilience, and I think in any profession, in any walk of life, we understand that in order for dreams to happen, again, not really woo-woo, oh, you could do anything you want. You could probably do anything you want if you're willing to work hard enough for it, to deal with the adversity, to deal with the setbacks. And the other message to me is it never quite goes as planned, and that's okay. I didn't think I'd be doing podcasts and motivational speaking, and I couldn't be happier. I did end up on TV, which is what I always dreamed of from first grade on. Pre- and post-game shows and sideline reporters didn't exist back then, so none of this went as I expected.
Well, and it's very I love that it's a very Americana theme as well, right? I mean, there's an element to that I feel like that is in here, which is don't give up, keep at it. I mean, every day is going to be a grind. There will be setbacks, but you play your cards right. There's no guarantee on the outcome, but you're setting yourself up for the best outcome possible. Yeah,
and I'm still pinching myself. I mean, I think the danger with what anyone that is living their dream or doing ultimately what they hope to do, and again, the reason why this is all like dreams to me is that when do you have a crystal clear dream?
Yeah.
It's always a little foggy and blurry, sometimes a lot, sometimes it doesn't make sense. But if I were to tell 7-8-year-old me what I'm doing now, I'd be like, wait, really? What is a podcast, first of all? What is a pregame show? But also, I would say, I got to do all that? I mean, if you look, you're holding the book right now, the top testimonial on the back of the book is from my childhood idol, Bob Costas. And he wrote it for me. And I'm still sitting there saying, how did that happen? And so for the most part, I'm used to, I'll do all the name drops here. It's not a big deal for me to be around Salvador Perez or around Paul Rudd or Jason Sudeikis or, yes, he's Ted Lasso. He's amazing. He's Paul Rudd. He's Ant-Man. He's on and on and on. But I've been around that stuff so much that sometimes you forget to pinch yourself. Mm-hmm. And I walk on that field every day. I try to remember that most people would love to be standing on this field, but I'm working. It's work. It's normal. And so when I could look at a book and see Bob Costas' name on it, not only that, I get an email from him yesterday. I get an email from him. I have not done this publicly, but I just want to
save it. Let's tease it.
Coming up after the break.
Coming up after the break. The email from Bob Costas to Joel Goldberg. His book, Small Ball, Big Dreams. Of course, you know him now going into his 18th year as a Royals broadcaster. We'll get the email from Costas to Joel next.
If it's happening in KCMO, it's on KCMO 95.7 FM. Here's Pete Mundo.
We got Joel Goldberg, Royals broadcaster, going into his 18th year. His new book is out, Small Ball, Big Dreams. And Joel, I assume you can get this Amazon, Barnes & Noble, wherever you get your books, right?
Yeah, Amazon is the easy one, of course. Now, if you want my first grade level signature, which is what my handwriting looks like, I look like a doctor, then you can order it from my website, joelgoldbergmedia.com.
Okay.
And
That's
I know
great.
it's going to be popping up in Made in KC stores and Rainy Day Books. If it's not there already, very soon. They've got copies of that, and it's going to be popping up in some other spots too.
Oh, that's great, man. Local support. That's what we need.
Totally.
So the email that you received from Bob Costas, who is on the back of the book, showing his support for this book, Small Ball, Big Dreams. What did the email say from Costas?
So I'll just back up that I got the nerve up. Even I get nervous on some things, and I got the nerve up to reach out to him in November and ask if I could send him a copy of the manuscript and if he would write a testimonial for it. And he said yes. I see him at some stuff. He was doing Royals, Yankees. I didn't actually not. Well, I saw him in the playoffs, but when we were at Yankee Stadium, he was doing it for MLB Network.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
And I've gotten. I did something at Cooperstown with him when Buck O'Neil went into the Hall of Fame and moderated a panel. And I first met him. Just to backtrack real quick, I first met him when I was 21 years old. I was a college intern. I went down to Memphis, Tennessee for the summer to the TV station, and they had the AA All-Star Game there. And the honorary managers for the All-Star Game were Bob Costas and Larry King. And I was the intern that trailed along with the reporter. And so I met both of those guys. And I remember telling Costas something like, I hope one day to be half as good as you, Mr. Costas. I don't know what that means. And so, told him that story before and got to know him over the years, but not close with him or anything. Anyway, he did the testimonial. I was incredibly grateful. I sent him a copy saying, thanks so much for taking part in this. And, you've been an inspiration to me, blah, blah, blah. He emails me yesterday saying, thanks for sending the book. Nicely done. Just as important as talent and craftsmanship is doing work that is true to who you are. That's what you have done and will continue to do. All the best, Bob Costas. And I've read it and I'm like, gosh, enjoy this moment, because the 15-year-old, the 20-year-old you, even the 30-year-old you would be like, you just got that, and he wrote that testament, all this stuff, like, and this was unsolicited now, him sending this back. You don't expect that. And it just, like, I guess there are lessons in everything. That's the way I look at it. Maybe it's the motivational speaker in me, but I looked at it and I'm like, we all need to do this for other people. Like, we are all that to someone else in whatever your profession. And all it took was, 2 minutes, 1 minute for him to do that, and it resonated with me, a 50-something-year-old guy. And so it just reminded me that, like, that little bit of encouragement or good job type of stuff, it can go a long way.
You're absolutely right. Real quick, how was Larry King?
He as sweet as could be. He was
great.
great.
Was he?
Yeah,
okay, good.
He was great.
I thought you were going to tell me he was a prima donna,
No, he was great. Both were. I wish this was like the social media days where I would have had a selfie.
Yeah.
Or hey, can you do a quick 1 minute, I don't know, TikTok or Instagram or something with me?
Yes.
But both guys were great.
Oh, they were?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I love that. I got a couple minutes here, but, as we get set for the season, a lot of attention, obviously, on this team after getting back to the playoffs last year. And we'll have you back to talk baseball as the season gets closer. But you were just down in Arizona.
Yeah.
What's your sense right now about where these guys are at?
Very focused, very confident, which is exactly what I expected. Very much the look of a group that has been there and knows that they're going back. Not that they're taking it for granted, but they expect it. I love the fact that they were disappointed that they ended the year losing to the Yankees. I love the fact that they believe they fell short last year. For so many of us, it was, hey, this all feels like icing on the cake. This 106-loss team went to the playoffs the next year. They didn't see it that way. But just the early observations are they're stacked with their pitching. They're stacked with their bullpen. And the chemistry is great. The other two quick observations, both may be obvious, but they're worth mentioning. However good you think Bobby Witt Jr. is, he's better. And so I have not covered a player like this since day one of his career, since Albert Pujols. And I'm not saying he's going to be Albert Pujols because it's a totally different skill set. I can't tell you what he's going to be. But I certainly think that there's the chance that if he's here his whole career and he's locked up long term, that he could be in the discussion of greatest Royal of all time. And I'm saying that full well understanding, everybody, just chill here, that it's only 3 years in. It may never happen. We'll see. But his skill set and his talent is unlike anything we've ever seen here in Kansas City. This is a Patrick Mahomes-level athlete that we are seeing from the beginning. So just enjoy and embrace it. He's only going to get better, and he's great already. And the other piece is, I don't know when it's coming, but when Jack Caglione makes it up from the minor leagues, and I think he'll probably start the year in AA, but we could see him as early as this year, maybe next year. it's going to be ridiculous because he is a monster of a power hitter.
That's awesome. We will end it on that high note with Joel Goldberg. Outstanding work. Get the book, Barnes & Noble, Amazon, the easiest way to get it. Small Ball, Big Dreams. It is out. The forward is by George Brett. Great job, Joel. Thanks for being here.
Pete, thanks for having me in.